I'm James Catherall, founder of Catherall Audio. So, MuseScore 4.4 came out a few weeks ago, and they introduced their own updated drumline sounds and talked about it a lot. But alongside that, they also introduced a new library that I think is the real game changer in this update. You can now use the Virtual Drumline sounds natively inside of MuseScore. If you aren't familiar with it, Virtual Drumline, or VDL for short, is the industry standard in the world of marching percussion sample libraries. It's used by everybody in the activity, along with a lot of people outside the activity too. I'll put it this way, if you've ever watched a commercial that has drumline sounds in it, they either recorded a drumline specifically for that commercial, or they used the VDL sound library. The most impressive part is that VDL was released in 2003, and the last major update came in 2007, and it's still the standard that everyone uses today. And that isn't to say that no one else has tried. There are many drumline and marching percussion sound libraries, but none have been able to replace this powerhouse. I've put together a demo of the sounds in MuseScore that I'll play a little bit later, but first I want to talk about why this is such a game changer for MuseScore. The biggest part is the price. If you want to buy VDL outside of MuseScore, it costs $199. But if you buy it from MuseHub, you can get the battery sounds for $10 and the rest of the percussion sounds for another $20. That's not to mention all of the additional items you need, which leads into the second point. It's essentially plug and play inside of MuseScore. This eliminates one of the biggest hurdles that I've seen a lot of users run into. The main audience of these type of libraries are musicians first and tech wizards second, which is to say that sound libraries tend to require a strong understanding of computers and the applications to be able to get them running. Tapspace does their best to make VDL as easy to use as possible, but they don't have control over the other software apps that they have to run in, which are constantly being updated and have their interface being adjusted, which can make it difficult to have an easy step-by-step guide that everyone can follow and have that guide be as consistently accurate as possible. The number one issue I see people run into is that they have their notation software, like for example, let's say Sibelius, and then they buy Virtual Drumline and are ready to dig in. And then they realize that it doesn't quite work right out of the box. You need a third thing, which is a template. The most common one was from a website called the Right Score. What they were selling is a percussion map. This is what tells Sibelius which sounds to play back when you push certain notes on your MIDI controller. So you can play an A flat and get a regular right hand hit, or a G flat and get a left hand hit, or a G natural for a rim shot, and so on and so forth. Now, you could create this yourself inside of Sibelius, but there were hundreds of instruments and it would take a really long time to do that yourself. MuseScore solved this by creating a percussion mapping for you out of the box. So you can buy the sounds and instantly start writing without any extra steps in between. This made the friction way lower and the user experience significantly easier. And everyone wins in this scenario. That way you don't necessarily need to have a computer science degree to get started with all of this. You can get straight to the stuff you actually want to be doing, which is writing music. With all of those things put together, you had to spend $199 for the Virtual Drumline library, then another $199 for the annual Sibelius subscription, and then $50 for the percussion mapping template. Now you can get MuseScore for free and spend a total of $30 to have the exact same thing. Game changing. I checked between the MuseScore version of Virtual Drumline and the version off of the Tapspace website, and as far as I could see, the MuseScore version has about 90% of the sounds. I'll put all of it up on the screen now. You can pause this to dive deep and see if there are any deal breakers in there for you. All of the auto right, left, and manual libraries have been combined in MuseScore because you can input stickings to get the specific playback that you want, or you can leave it without stickings and it'll default to the auto right, left. They also didn't include any of the VDL1 instruments, and the marching bass drums only have 6 drums mapped. And finally, one of the bigger ones is that it doesn't include any of the rack combos either. Alright, now let's take a look at the sounds inside of MuseScore. Here's the demo I put together that's about 30 seconds long. If you're already familiar with VDL, then it's going to sound the same because it's all the same samples, just inside of a different playback engine. Just like with the MuseScore drumline sounds, you can input the stickings and that will control which samples get played back. They also included the sound flags, which makes it way easier to switch between implements for mallets and battery. You don't have to fiddle with any instrument changes to make any of that stuff happen. One of the biggest issues with the playback for the battery instruments is the flam playback. There's not a way to adjust the grace note playback distance that I could find. The only suggestion I have at the moment is to input the acciaccatura grace notes, which are the ones with the little slash through them. That'll make them play back closer together, which will make the rhythms more readable. The playback of the dynamics also has some issues. I think the range between the loudest dynamics and the softest dynamic is a little too wide, which makes me avoid using piano or pianissimo, otherwise I can't hear them in playback. I noticed some issues with the mapping of instruments and some instruments being mislabeled. The suspended cymbal roll playback is difficult to fine-tune, but that's a tricky issue that I don't think any notation software has really figured out. One small tip for writing auxiliary or rack percussion parts is to make use of the feature to hide the staves, but to still hear the playback. So my aux parts are written out in a way that can be printed out and handed to the players, but for the purposes of playback inside the software, I've added each instrument individually, and then I just hide the staff by going to Instruments, clicking the disclosure triangle of the instrument I want to hide, and then click this eyeball here. That'll hide the staff, but still allow the sounds to be played back. Overall, I think this is one of the largest steps forward I've seen in the marching percussion notation community since the release of VDL. This opens up the door for a lot of people to access better playback sounds without spending a lot of money or needing to mess with any tricky software stuff. It's priced affordably and you can have it up and running in seconds once it's done downloading. I'm really excited to see what this will do for the future of this space. It would be cool to see Note Performer introduced to MuseScore. Then you could have full marching band scores using all of the industry standard libraries that everyone has come to expect in their MIDI mockup MP3s. Now, there's still room for a lot of improvement, but I've had great discussions with some of the staff at MuseScore, and it seems like they really want to work to make all of this as great as it possibly can be. If you liked this video, I also did a review of the new MuseScore drumline sounds. You should see a link for that on your screen somewhere around here. And as usual, if this video is helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.